In all the work that I do, you hear me most often talking about positive versus negative energies, love versus fear, right versus wrong, good versus evil, our spiritual self versus our ego self. Today, we're talking about thinking twice before we stand up for ourselves, and here's what I mean. In standing up for ourselves, which polarity are we leaning toward? The love energies that help us to reach and expand, or the fear energies that encourage the negativity of ego that keep us stuck? Today, we're talking about when to stand up for ourselves and when to take a step back in compassion with a greater spiritual perspective of the situation we're in. This podcast is all about helping you with your spiritual growth so you can overcome obstacles and manifest your destiny, to crystallize and materialize any dream, to have success on life's journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. I hope today's episode inspires you to look more closely at when to step up and when to take a step back. So here we go. Hi there and welcome. My name is Remy, like Do Re Mi. I'm a best-selling author and creator of the Get Unstuck Revolution. I help extraordinary women just like you dissolve the obstacles in your path so you can bring success to you. Now let's get started with today's video. Okay, let me jump off the screen here so I can see my laptop. Today, we're talking about thinking twice before we stand up for ourselves. Are we justified in making a knee-jerk reaction, especially for things we believe in so strongly? Or in those moments when we're reacting, are we being challenged to take a step back for a higher perspective? Because every challenge in life and in business is asking us to reach and expand into more of who we really are. And this helps us to take the next steps toward our next success. If you'd like to see success in full abundance along life's journey, and if you're wanting to tap into a greater knowingness and align with the higher consciousness of your infinite self, instead of the lower ego thinking that pushes success away, then this episode is for you. It's time to be unabashedly, unapologetically, happily untethered to ego thinking. It's time to align with the higher energies of our soul's path instead. This episode is for you if you wonder how to find your strength and courage even in the most challenging situations. What will work best for you? What will make you feel the most empowered without hurting anyone around you? And how to know whether you're serving your highest and best self or whether you're inadvertently calling in ego to do the dirty work instead of finding the best possible outcomes. Yes, these episodes are about how to find your hidden power when you want to transform challenges into successes. I like to call it the audacity of alchemy. Because when we're feeling stuck, it's never the situation that has us stuck. It's our energy that's become stuck in anxiety, overwhelm, doubts, worries, frustrations, indecision, and even anger. And often this is because of a spiritual injury that we've experienced, some kind of hidden trauma. So it isn't the pain of the situation, it's the pain of not being connected in the natural energy of who we really are, of being connected to that magical part of us that's a creative vibrational being who can use these positive energies to create what we want and bring it into physical manifestation. We can allow our manifestations to materialize and not get stuck in the negative vibrations that block them. These positive energies that we talk about so much are where we find the magic of alchemy, because our choice of frequency, our choice of those higher energy thought patterns can change the course of our journey. And today, we're talking about thinking twice before we stand up for ourselves. And here's what I mean. We want to always be managing our own energy. So in standing up for ourselves, which polarity are we leaning toward? The love energies that help us to reach and expand, or the negative fear energies that rev up the insidiousness of ego that blocks us from what we truly want to create? I was inspired to do this episode because someone sent me a message recently after a webinar. And here's what she said. She said, I've tried everything. I'm stuck in a marriage that I don't want to be in, and I've been to every life coach and spiritual counselor I can find. None of it has worked to help me find my own strength and courage. So I went to a relationship therapist, and this therapist actually said to me, maybe you need to be a little less doormat and a little more edgy. Can you believe it? She literally had me stand up, take on a warrior pose, and heave these weird noises. She said to force air out of my lungs using all my abdominal muscles as fast and as hard as I could. I thought I was going to hack up a lung. This was so not me. I want to find peace and strength in my life, not my inner warrior. Well, you might be surprised how often I hear things like this. First of all, I hear the comment, I've tried everything almost daily. But I also hear a lot of bad advice from well meaning friends and professionals. Well, maybe not bad advice, but is it the right advice for you? If you've been listening to this podcast for very long, you know that I don't always support the therapeutic models. And some people want to voice their opinions about this to me, and that's perfectly fine. The important thing is, what will work for you? You know, I've said this in the past that in certain situations, traditional therapy is completely useful. And in other situations, it restimulates the pain and keeps that pain active without actually solving the problem or helping the patient become more of who they're meant to be. In certain situations, a proper diagnosis leads to a proper treatment plan. And in other situations, a missing or wrong diagnosis can put a person into a downward spiral. It brings up the question, do we need physical therapy, emotional therapy, behavioral therapy, psychological therapy, or spiritual therapy? Every situation is so different. I've seen some people who were guided into how to stand up for themselves. In fact, I had one woman in a workshop who did this. She stood up for herself and then got badly beaten that weekend. She didn't know when to stand up and when to step back. Her timing was off. As they say, you can't negotiate with an angry person. There's no winning. And it's an art to step back from it before it escalates into anger. Now, I've also worked with people who have been in a cult, and now we have brainwashing as well as PTSD and any number of other effects. So, which is appropriate therapy? Psychological, spiritual, or both? And then I'm reminded of Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. We love him, don't we? He often has said that he doesn't train dogs, he rehabilitates the dog and trains the human. So, with his dog psychology center, is he using dog psychology, behavioral therapy, or rehabilitation? Even with an angry dog, it matters which strategy is used, right? Well, as you can see, this can be a complicated thing, and we're going to talk about it today because there is no one size fits all solution, but I'm hoping to shed some light on what's right for you. You know, all the work that I do, you hear me most often talking about polarities, positive versus negative energies, love versus fear, our spiritual self or our soul self versus our ego self. So when I say to think before you stand up for yourself, here's what I mean. Some therapists, family members, or well meaning friends will often tell us to stand up for ourselves. The question we have to ask is, will this encourage my ego self to go off the deep end into negative energies? If I stand up for myself, yes, maybe I'm moving up and out of the energies of doubt and frustration and indecision. Maybe that's a good thing to raise my emotional tone level on up to anger. But is that really a good thing, or is that encouraging the bad behavior of ego? Because remember, universal law says that when we hurt someone else out of anger or confusion, we also end up hurting ourselves. We hurt actually all of mankind energetically. So in standing up for ourselves, we have to ask if we're hurting another person at the same time. Are we responding and reacting with conflict, struggle, antagonism, or anger? Are we responding with doubts, confusion, anxiety, mistrust? And how will these emotions, and I've got them on the screen for you here, help us with our spiritual growth? Well, there are some who believe that we live on a polarity planet, good versus evil, right versus wrong, and that each of our life experiences holds this polarity. Will we serve the higher frequencies, or will we serve the lower frequencies? Through discernment and choice, we can make a decision as to what serves ourselves and others in the best way possible. Are we serving our highest infinite self, or are we serving ego? Let me say that again. Through discernment and choice, we can make a decision as to what serves ourselves and others in the very best way possible. So we can ask, are we serving our highest infinite self, or are we serving ego? And this is why stepping back is sometimes a better choice than stepping up. All right. So, if we live on a polarity planet, then each of our life experiences is asking us to reach and expand to take advantage of the growth opportunities that come our way. And one of the best ways to do this is to take on the perspective of our infinite self, that we are always encouraged to hold love, patience, and compassion toward others. So, let's look at an example. A common, shall we say, growth opportunity is feeling a reaction in the middle of traffic. When we feel a reaction, do we shake our fist and curse the other driver, or do we send them blessings? Well, imagine the guy who is jammed for space by another car on the freeway, another driver who's trying to inch his way in front when there's clearly not enough room. you know, I've talked about my grandmother before, and she would occasionally find herself in this position, and she would sing out to the other driver in French. And I never knew what she was saying because I couldn't speak the language when I was little. But she would always tell me that she was sending the guy blessings. But I suspect it might have been quite the opposite. But you just never know. Maybe the guy's wife is about to have a baby, and now he's faced with freeway traffic and he's so worried about her. Or maybe the guy has a sick or injured dog and he's trying to desperately get to the vet before it's too late. We just don't know what the driver is going through in that moment. But we do have the choice to react with love, patience, and compassion. If our attitude toward a driver is not loving and compassionate, then are we holding a higher perspective that we're all one? Or are we failing in that moment to make a choice to send him blessings? My grandmother's response may have been to balance that moment of fear or negativity, to recenter in compassion and without the me of ego. Regardless of what she was saying in French or English, her energy was actually sending blessings. Interesting, right? Well, these situations that suddenly appear in front of us, well, yes, they are interesting because they all tend to start from a position of fear in those situations that feel risky to us in some way. Balancing that response by bringing it around to compassion is the basic ethical challenge of many of our life experiences. Ethical because it's bringing an opportunity for either a positive or a negative response, an opportunity to align with positive energies rather than fear or resistance. The trick is in knowing whether the situation is a catalyst for growth. If there's an opportunity for growth, the situation will feel emotionally, and it'll either be positively or negatively charged. It won't be neutral. It'll bring out a reaction in us. Yes, we have a choice to not respond. If we find ourselves emotional, though, if we want to react, we do have a choice in that moment to find the wisdom within the moment, to uncover the hidden message that's inviting us to grow into more of who we are. If we feel emotional, it's an invitation for us to grow into more of who we are. Our choice is to reach and expand our compassion, our integrity, our spiritual perspective. I mean, we could react with anger, fear, or doubt. In a situation where we are positively or negatively charged, we have the opportunity to ask, who do I want to be in this situation? Do I want to be more of who I really am? And if our immediate response is, well, I don't want to be that guy, well, there's our answer. Okay. So, you know how I just love empowering questions. So let's do that right now. I'd like you to think of a recent situation where you were emotionally charged. Either something felt risky or maybe you were uncertain. A time when you'd either need to stand up for yourself or take a step back. Just think of a recent situation where you were emotionally charged. It might have been like we've already talked about, like somebody almost causing an accident right in front of you. Maybe a relationship that you weren't sure about whether you wanted to move forward because you've just learned that they have a history of cheating and taking advantage, and maybe you don't want to go through that again. Maybe someone was hating on you and being critical without even getting to know you. Whatever example you're thinking of, I'd like you to remember that moment that you could either stand up for yourself or take a step back in compassion. And as you're remembering and as you begin to relive that moment again, right here in present time, here are some questions that you can ask yourself. Does the narrative need to be changed? In other words, is there a misunderstanding and maybe a little communication is needed? Could you change the energy and bring joy or maybe curiosity into the situation instead of feeling like you're at risk? What are the possibilities here for a successful outcome? Maybe you can think of 3 possibilities for a better than expected outcome. Are you aligned with who you've become and what you value the most? Are you aligned with your infinite self and your values? Or are you slipping back into who you used to be because of unresolved fears? And the last empowering question, is it time to step up or step back with compassion, either for yourself or for the other person? Compassion for yourself or for the other person. Now, if the situation indeed calls for you to stand up for yourself, that's fine. Just ask if your emotions are empowering you. Are they filling you with strength and grace and compassion, and even helping the other person to be better and stronger and brighter themselves? Or as you stand up for yourself, are your emotions a little bit more toward anger? As we empower ourselves, we are choosing a higher frequency, higher and better thoughts, because our choice of frequency changes the course of our journey, and it can change the course of others' journey as well. So, reflecting back on everything we covered today, how can you apply what you've learned? Can you see those situations where a simple shift in perspective might bring an opportunity to become more of who you really are? Well, I hope this helps you as you're using the powers of alchemy to transform challenges and obstacles into positive new successes. This podcast is all about helping you to have success on your spiritual growth journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. If you still can't get your head around what's got you stuck, you can tell me about it. You can send me a question to questions@unlockyourhiddenpower.com, or you may not know that you can schedule a one-on-one session with your own personal unstuckologist, that's me, by visiting instantbreakthroughsession.com. This private session is designed to help you tap into your greatest resource, that's you. And together, we can make quite a team toward calling in the transformational powers of alchemy. In our time together, we'll uncover your single biggest stuck point, the one you can't see. We'll also go over the most genius way to create clarity so you can just move forward while one obstacle after another is obliterated. And we'll create a strategy to get you moving in a really good direction, the one that's aligned with your life purpose. If this sounds like a match made in heaven, you can hop on over to instantbreakthroughsession.com right now and book the time slot that works best for you. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'm wishing you a life filled with all the alchemy you need to bring success to you. Feel free to share this video with anyone you know who's feeling stuck, and don't forget that you can hop over there and visit instantbreakthroughsession.com.